Hi, and welcome to Tilting with Tuples. My name is Lewis Davidson. Today, I want to talk about a topic that I haven't talked about since at least yesterday, and that is data quality. And it's really pretty much all I talk about in my life, in my job, now that I'm back at working with code and writing things, especially writing ETL again. Data quality comes up every single day. And pretty much all my presentations have been about data quality. I wrote a database design session, obviously about data quality. Concurrency session, all about data quality. And you think it's about performance. Everybody really cares about performance, but they care about performance less than they care about data quality. You know, it doesn't really matter if you do something really fast, if it's really wrong. And it's sometimes even worse if it's just a little bit wrong. Because just a little bit wrong is so much harder to find. And if you didn't care about data quality and you wanted higher concurrency, get rid of the locking, get rid of versioning, just throw data in. Nothing's going to hurt on your side. It's still going to look like it worked most of the time, but who cares about the data quality? Implementing a hierarchy of graph. It leans code, but the end goal is finding ways to represent hierarchical data in a way that's fast, but doesn't lose data. If you lose data when you're saving data, it's bad. Okay. I even have a session on DML triggers, and we all hate triggers, even those of us who really kind of like them from a fun standpoint, from things you can do with them, hate them because they're totally a pain. But if I can't get data quality without a trigger, I'm getting a trigger. I mean, there are a few professional development sessions that aren't totally about data quality, but a lot of the time, a lot about what I care about is the data quality. And I want you to build your profession and get better and better at making quality data. So what is a data app? I'm going to go ahead and just say it right now. Every application you're working on right now is probably a data app. Almost certainly. And I get a lot of pushback sometimes when I say this. Somebody will say, our app's not a data app. And I go, well, what do you do? We sell products. We build an app that entices people to buy products, and then we sell it to them and we ship it to them. That's the purpose of our system. And fine. What happens when you sell a product? Well, someone's sitting at the computer and they push the button, they find the product, which you've hard coded into the application. And I know people do that more and more these days, because a lot of times you'll have to get a new version of the app because they added some extra product or extra product line. Fine. Say that's no data. Someone goes, I want to buy this product and I'm going to pay for it this way. When you push the button, most likely it immediately triggers down a little wire, a little finger thing that pokes someone in the owner and says, Bob in Illinois wants this product. You need to get that product, go drive it to them, and take their money. That's clearly not what happens. As I talked about last week in my episode on why do we build databases, every product order most of the time is just save a piece of data in the database. Every credit card operation is ideally you charge the card, you get back a thing that says it's been charged. You're going to get the money later. Put it in a little bucket, and you save all the things. You put it on an order. A couple hours later, maybe someone in the warehouse goes, picks that from the data, writes down a piece of data that says we bought that product, and from there, another product is gone that we shipped it, and in another row that you've received it. Okay, so selling products, absolutely a data app. Well, my app is a video app. Okay, we're getting less and less, right? Perhaps you think, well, that's not a data app. There's no data. Let's just forget about the fact that the video itself is data, because you can hard code that data. You can say it doesn't really matter. The quality will come out in testing. But does anybody present videos to people and not want to know if they watched it? not want to know how much they watched it? Do you eventually want to sell it to them? Maybe make a little money off of your videos? Absolutely. You can get a lot of data from YouTube or all the platforms. Netflix is checking where did you stop? What did you do? Right? That's how they know what's good. That's how they know whether they should renew something or not. Even if we're all annoyed because we know we watched it. It's data. They don't just go, we feel like people are watching this. They think, we feel like if this wasn't on here, it wouldn't change the dial of who was subscribing. So we're going to cancel it. All right. So next, the person comes up and says, I make video games. That's not a data app. I go, well, that's nice. There are a few cases, honestly, where it is not a data app. And poof, it's gone. If you're watching the video, you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, no big deal. Anyhow, so then the person says, well, I make video games. And let me just say, you almost got me. Video games aren't about data at all. It comes in a cartridge. We play it. We don't save our progress. We don't have achievements. We don't license it. It's just on a card. And well, okay, so it's not 1985 anymore. But even in 1985, I played The Legend of Zelda. First time we played this thing, we played it for 6 months, basically. And the cartridge died. And that's where the data was stored. The game would probably still play. I can't remember. I think it did. But it wouldn't save the data. You had to start over. So mad. Did we care that Legend of Zelda was a beautiful user interface? I mean, compared to now, it's not beautiful, but back then it was pretty awesome. Do we care that was a pretty user interface? Not one bit. Would we have rather played Tears of the Kingdom? Just finished playing that game. Beautiful user interface for storing data, right? Of the things you picked up, the things you did. Would I rather play Tears of the Kingdom? This beautiful thing. I've got a new Switch 2 that works and plays great, but doesn't save my data all the time. And sometimes it just deletes the data. I'm going to just go ahead and say, no, I'd rather play something that works. But there are video games. We could say that the, like Mario Brothers and back in the day, Super Mario Brothers, where you would play and there was no saving, there was no stopping. I mean, that would be really hard today. Because now we have, you can, not only can you play this on the Switch, stop and rewind and see what you did and not lose your life on the older games. But you can save it and you can make a copy of it. And you can say, I want to see what happens if I turn here. See what happens if I do this. It's all about data. I make thermometers for people's homes. Well, I mean, if you make something like a Edison thermometer, it's just like the tube with the color liquids that rise and fall based on the temperature. Absolutely. But I bet you, if you build an app that does thermometers, there's data. You've got to store the history. I build simple, no frills, no computer cars. Okay, back in the day, cars, was there data in there? No, right? We just had dial and pieces of wire and your steering wheel actually connected directly to the turning system and stuff. So absolutely no concern, no data there. Wait, hold on. There was an odometer, and that odometer was telling you how far you'd driven. You could, beat that, I was told. I live in Cleveland, Tennessee, and there was once a 60 Minutes episode about here and some of that sort of thing. But look it up. It's interesting. All right, how about if you build a simple clock app? You're not going to save any data. You don't care if anybody's using it. You don't want money for it. You don't want any of that. No data. Perfect. That's a no data app. But what if someone can change the color? I want to change the color and the font of that clock data. Now, going back to what we talked about last week on the last episode, I don't know if it's last week at this point. I will stop this one moment. I'm recording these before I put them out. So I have no idea if anybody liked last week, watched it. I know I recorded a couple of weeks ago, and I'm trying to record them all here, try to get them out this year. I'm doing 11 episodes. And so I need 11 weeks before the end of the year. Here's the thing. I'm not suggesting by any means that your app is strictly data. I would not want you to start building an app like they used to have at the Ford dealer that I would go to. And to enter that I wanted an oil change. I kid you not. And if you have a car and never had any service done at a dealer, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But they would go to another computer, enter in a bunch of stuff, and then go back to the other computer. And it was like, customer does this, customer does that, and they thinking this and thinking that. There's still some of that. I went in and wanted a service, and I needed brakes. I bought the warranty. And they told me you need to have your brakes done. And it says customer states needs brakes. I did not state that. I did not want new brakes. Didn't cost me anything, so I didn't mind getting new brakes, but I was not in there to get new brakes. Everything felt like it stopped just fine. I had no concerns personally. So I'm not asking you to think of every app as in terms of how can I store data. I want you to think of the app as how can I produce something that people want and will do things. Because let's say you have a beautiful app, best interface ever. Maybe it stores the names of your contacts. It's perfection. Every time you use this thing, you're just like, I want to use this more. I could enter my contacts every day, 20 times a day, and not mind having to do this. And luckily, this app, every time you try to save something, crashes. So it does give you the opportunity to use it over and over for fun. Nobody is going to be happy with that, right? Now, let's say that app was ugly. Looks like it was built in the 1980s disco scene. It has it's flashing lights and it flashes at you. When you put in a digit that's wrong, it flashes up and maybe it kicks you in the head. There's a little button that comes out of the thing that smacks you in the head. It requires 7 times more clicks than the previous app to store any piece of data. But every time you store that data, it stores that data exactly as you asked it to. Which one do you want? I don't know about the kicking in the head part. I'm going to take that part out. Let's get rid of that feature. But I want the app that works. Because an app that doesn't work makes more work for me in other ways. So I'm not suggesting you build ugly apps. It's not the 1980s. And we didn't have apps back then. And I didn't wear bell bottoms. So I'm not that old. Or that fashionable for that matter. What I'm asking you to do is realize that you have 2 customers. You have the external customer. You have your user. You have the person who has to use this microphone, your car, your iPad. That customer needs to get what they want. It needs to look good, feel good. It needs to make them happy that they're using your software. From initial action, your processing orders, shipments, video gameplay, all that stuff should feel good, not by any means suggesting otherwise. And so that kind of data, I think, is much easier for people to get. I know why I need to store data for the customer. And that is really good. There's some things we'll talk about in a second, but some things you want to make sure you consider when you're doing that and make sure the customer understands it. But you have 2 customers, 2 sides of the fence, the customer side, the external customer, and the internal customer. Just like the video example, everything you put out there, every app, every product, everything, say everything, every bit of that is something that a customer does. They touched the product, they looked at the product, they did this, they did that, they ordered the product, etc. All that needs to be right for them. But it's just as much it needs to be right for the internal customers, because they're going to immediately ask, why am I not selling the bell bottoms? Right? Is anybody even looking at them? Why, lots of people are looking at them. And then they stay there for a minute or two and they look at them and they check all the pictures. Why are they doing that? And not buying? But yet there's another product in the same company on the same app they buy a lot of, and they don't stay there very long. All this stuff is what makes you money as a data person. Being able to store that data, capture that data, all that data that can then be analyzed is why they store data. It's why they build applications. It's why we do things. We want to know why people are buying things. We want to know why people aren't buying them. And the more they will buy and the happier they are, the happier the company is. It's simple. So what do we need to make sure of? Well, we always want to know that our data is consistent, or people know that. Like there's some apps that use what's called eventual consistency. And so you have two people can modify the same data somehow. Eventually they're going to be consistent, but you may lose some data. And we don't totally mind that when it's something like a forum. And if you ever lost data in a forum and you're wondering like, what happened? Well, maybe you had two windows open up editing the same thing. I was working with my boss today on the whiteboard on Teams, and I was messing with it while she was messing with it. And right, that kind of thing is okay when you know it's going to happen. But we want to make sure that we get correct data so that customers get their products, they enjoy their games, and we on the other side can count the things that happen. Okay, you don't want to be like, well, on Tuesdays we have this extra process that runs and it messes up sometimes, but we don't mind. We just know when it happens. No, and customers get that way. Like your internal customers get that way. They're like, this is the way it works. It's all I could do. I'm gonna do it as best I can. And that's one thing I always try to remind people. Everybody, programming would be fun if it wasn't for users. No, it wouldn't. It would be a lonely process. It's users need to get their job done. And sometimes it's just hard because we make it hard. And if you make it hard for the customer, you're going to make it hard for ETL team. Right. And sometimes I think ETL people ought to be like, the quarterback who buys the front line a car because they do so good. And so you can stand back there and just throw passes and go, and then throw the pass, right? If you've ever watched Troy Aikman in the old days or Tom Brady too, those are two examples of people I think of who are just, they were stoic. They didn't always have to run. They were just like, because they had this protection. And they didn't let the bad people in and come smack them in the head all that often. That's what we want out of our data. We want the good data to come in and the bad data to stay out. We want to make sure it's durable. Like every time we save some data, it's saved. If it's not, that's bad. One of the situations that's really kind of annoying is when you don't treat things as atomic operations. Like say you order 5 products and pay for it, and then only 3 of the products get actually saved because, there was a glitch, but the payment goes through and you don't get your products and nobody knows why, right? There's a lot of things like that you just have to think about. And I know, again, the people who are coming up with these things and building these systems, you're not data people. It's not your goal, right? You don't think about that side in the same way as somebody who focuses on data. The customer does, right? Anytime there's bad data, they hear it. So let's just summarize. Your app is a data app. Almost 99.99% sure whatever you're building is a data app. Storing data, it's using data, and it's important. And keep that in mind. Think about that. Think about the people who are affected by this. Whether you're the person building the app, running the operations, doing the work of any level from the data, because data has a life cycle that goes on forever. I mean, and pretty much ever. I mean, I doubt that Microsoft sales of DOS back in 1970 something matter that much these days, but it's still around. I'm sure they have a database somewhere where they can look at that and compare. They can build a chart that has the 70s to the, they had that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you realize that everything you're doing saves data and that data matters. See you next time.